tractor for normal seasonal lawn mowing on a reasonably sized lawn. You should do this at least once a year. The description for this video is very detailed. If you're only interested in doing one or two of these jobs, just go to the description and click on the timestamp next to the job and you can go right to it. But I honestly recommend doing all of this periodically and your tractor will stay in great shape for many years. This particular one I'm working on is a 2006 and it's still in superb shape. At the end of the video, I include pictures of all the receipts for all the parts I spent doing these jobs. It's much more appealing and motivating for me to work on a semi-clean piece of equipment. But that's just me, I'm a little bit weird about it. We'll come back later at the end of this video and detail this tractor and get it all shined up. But for right now, we're just taking off the big stuff and getting it semi-clean. To remove the cutting blades on this tractor, to have them sharpened or to replace them, you have to remove this deck from the tractor. Now, what looks like it might be a big job is actually very simple. The deck just kind of hangs underneath the tractor through a series of pins and hangers. So you have 5 pins holding the hangers in place. There's a second one and there's one on the front. Get to it, bring it down there, and then there's 2 on the other side. So there's nothing high tech here. For most of this job you don't even need any tools. When you adjust the grass height and pull up on that lever, it pulls up on these hangers or lets the hangers down a little bit depending on the notch that you put it in. So there's me pulling it up and adjusting the grass height level higher, and you can see the deck came up. But before we get to these pins and these hangers, the first thing you want to do is disconnect this bracket holding this cable in, which is the cable that pulls on a lever and engages the blades underneath the deck. And here I'll show you a picture of the lever so you can get familiar with that. When we shift this lever to engage the cutting blades, that's what pulls on that cable and pulls on another lever underneath the tractor, which engages the blades. Disengage the blade and put it in the off position. And so the first thing we have to do is take this bracket off that holds this cable into place. This is just 10mm bolts. Lower the deck to its lowest setting and put some kind of board or something under it so you can get your fingers up under there and lift it up. Once you have the bracket disconnected, go ahead and disconnect the spring from the lever. And go ahead and take the whole assembly and just put it aside off the deck, down on the ground right there. Now that's out of your way. And now we're on to these pins and these hangers here. Just turn them sideways like this, like you see me doing right here. And you can just pull them straight out. And be careful not to lose that washer, which is behind the pin. So just put that aside. And now you're going to have to lift up on the deck a little bit to just get this hanger loose. And move it to the side. And I'll show you how it fits in there in that slot. It's oval, so it only goes in that slot one way. And then the weight of the deck kind of just keeps it hung straight up and keeps it from falling out of there. We're on the left-hand side of the tractor, so if you're sitting on the seat, this would be the left-hand side right underneath you. And there's the other pin, and this also has a washer on it, so be careful not to lose it. Set that aside, and now pull that lever out that hanger, and there you go. And there's 2 down, and there's 1 on the front right here, and then there's 2 more on the other side. This pin is not as easy. It's not the same as the other ones. And it can be a little tricky getting out of there. Just do what you can to wiggle it out of there, and set that aside with your parts. And yeah, there's a washer on this one too, so be careful. Now we have to pull that lever out of that hole where we just took the pin off. Just leave that hang. And that's it for that side. Now we come to the right side and go down, and it's the same situation. Just pull this clip sideways and pull it out of there. Get the washer. Now move up to the next one, take off the pin and the washer, then lift up on the deck and take both brackets off, and the entire deck is disengaged from the tractor. The only thing you have left is this belt. You don't have to loosen those guides up or anything. They just keep the belt in, and it will lift off right out of there. Just takes a little maneuvering, and there you go. Now you can lift that deck out from under the tractor. This next job of taking these blades off is going to be a lot easier to do with those wheels there up in the air. So we need to turn this deck on the other side up with the wheels up in the air. It'll be a lot more steady and a lot easier to take these blades off that way. So we're going to flip this upside down. These things are they're not really heavy, they're just kind of awkward. I don't know what this weighs, probably 60, 70 pounds. It's just big and awkward. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world. And now we're going to use wood to wedge between the blades and the deck itself. I'll show you what I mean here. And this will keep the blades from spinning when we turn the nuts that hold the blades in. This nut has a washer behind it, and this washer is dished, and it only goes on one way. And you see these little holes right here? Well, that's how you know it's on right. If you don't see those holes, you did it backwards. You have to see those holes. They have to be on the bottom of the blade. These blades are also dished, and the way you know that you put them on right is that the number on the blade is at the top, so you can't see it from underneath. But if you look closely on this blade, there will be a number that goes toward the top, toward the sky. You can also see where the washer rode on the blade up underneath the blade. Be nice and clean where that washer was. the blades are being sharpened, I'm going to go ahead and clean up this deck real good, top and bottom. I'm going to have to scrape all the old grass and grime out of the bottom of the deck. Well, the blades are back from Ace Hardware and they did a great job. These things are super sharp, so you're going to have to be careful. So remember, numbers go up, just like that. Just make sure they're seated in there. Washer on the right way with the holes at the bottom, and then tighten it up. Everything looks good, and while the deck is off, we're going to lube up the key points of the tractor, and we're also going to replace the belt at the same time, because you have to disassemble certain parts to do both of those jobs. To get to the grease fitting on this right hand spindle here, you have to take this shroud off, and on this one it's 3 bolts, and these things rust, so while you got them off, it's a good idea to lube them up before you put them back on. So now we can locate the grease fittings on both the right and the left spindle hubs here. And if we go down under, there you can see it right there. And now we can stand up and go to the left one, and we'll have to go up under to the side of it, and there you can see it right there. Unfortunately, in order to get the grease gun to those fittings, we have to disassemble some parts, namely this blade brake, which is a little bit tricky going back together. So just all you have to do is loosen it. You don't have to take it all the way apart. And on the other one, you have to take this belt guide off. And you can see that's a water trap under there, and it's going to rust. It might be a good idea to clean that up, de-rust it, sand it down, and hit it with a couple coats of primer before you put it back together, because that's a hole in the deck waiting to happen. And go ahead and leave that guide off for now, because you're going to have to take that off to put a new belt on. And while we have the grease gun out, we're going to go ahead and lube up the front chassis and the front wheel hubs. There's one fitting right there, and there's one on the inside of the wheel. And then if we go over the other side, you see the grease fitting there, and another one on the inside of the wheel. Alright, so we have sharpened blades on, we have everything all lubed up, and the last step with this deck is to put a new belt on. You will have to take off the pulley that you see me taking off right now, but it's a really easy job. And the center pulley and next to it, to the right side of it, you will have to loosen up and pull up in order to get the old belt off and the new belt on. I'll give you a better look at what I'm doing in a second. And you have to take this pulley off. This one's a little stuck in there. Just try to pull it straight out in order to get the belt out, because that little piece of the bracket will hold the belt in there and you won't be able to get it off around there. And this gizmo also holds the belt in place, and you have to loosen that up in order to get the belt off. And you do have to take this one off, or just loosen it up and pull it up and get it wrapped around there. And push it back down, tighten it back up. Alright, all we have to do is tighten down that belt guide and both of those pulleys, set the blade brake, and tighten down the shroud, and we're done. All we got to do is put it back up under the tractor and we're good as new. Well, maybe not good as new. I'm working on another video down the road that restores this whole deck, and I have some ideas that are actually better than Mr. Deere's. I think I can actually get this deck better than new. That's right. Stay tuned to this channel. You need to subscribe right now, because if you're a John Deere fan and you own at least one John Deere, you're going to want to come back. Now it's time to make sure that everything is tight and in the right place, and take it for a spin and make sure everything is working properly. I'm pretty sure I can get through another year with these tires, but something has to be done with this front left one, which has a slow leak, and it's flat in about 2 days if you don't keep air in it, so we're going to deal with that now. There's a bracket underneath the tractor in the front center, and this is where you want to place the jack, and this will jack the whole tractor up, the front wheels of the tractor off the ground, so you'll be able to check your steering while you're under there. There's no lug nuts or anything holding these wheels on. It's just a washer and a small clip that connects into a slot in the axle. I'll show you when we get this tractor jacked up. It's no sweat. These rubber boots that go over the axle, they can be a little bit tricky to get off. Just do your best to pry it off, and if you have to, be careful not to rip it, but you can grab a big pair of pliers and just kind of yank it off there. What you'll find underneath is a clip, a ring clip, and a thick washer. And that's all that's holding these wheels on, all four of them. It's no big deal. You just have to pry that clip out of the slot enough to be able to take it off, and that's all there is to it. And be careful not to lose that washer. We'll be re-greasing the axle when we put it back on, but for right now we're going to take this wheel and tire to the shop and get a new tube in it. Take note that on the inside of the wheel there's another washer. Yours most likely stayed with the tractor and didn't come off with the wheel. But make sure, because if it did come off the wheel, you're liable to lose it, and you need that to put the wheel back on. Use a quality grease to grease up this axle and any bearings or any other moving parts. Anywhere you think grease would be good, put the grease and be excessive about it. Don't worry about wasting it. You can't have enough grease. Alright, the tire's back from the shop. We're going to put it back on the axle. Make sure that back washer's on. Put the wheel on. Spin it around. Get that grease flowing in there. And now we're just going to put the outside washer on and the clip on. And I'm going to give you a good view of where this clip goes into the slot in the axle. Make sure that clip is seated all the way into that groove. You don't want your wheels falling off going on down the road. And now for the boot. These can be tricky going on just like they can be tricky coming off. Just work your way in there. You'll see where it also rides on the groove that's actually on the wheel. Just kind of work it on until you get it on there right. Don't go pounding it with a hammer or throwing it in the woods. You need that. That's what keeps rain and dirt out of your wheel bearings. If you don't have one, pretty soon it's going to get cruddy and rusty in there, and you're going to have a problem. Check your owner's manual or just look on the outside of the tire itself and it will show you what the PSI level should be in the tire. And then go ahead and check all four and top them off. This is important. You'll get better gas mileage if you have the correct air pressure in all four tires. Plus you'll have better traction and everything. And now it's time for an oil change, and this couldn't be more simple, especially on this particular engine on this John Deere. But we'll get to that when we get to it. The oil will flow out of there a whole lot better if it's a little bit warm. So go ahead and warm up the engine. And here's a look at the cap that you simply just turn clockwise until it lines up with that out groove right there, and then you just pull the cap out with your hands. Make sure there's a drain bucket underneath to catch that oil. And be careful, if you warmed up your engine, this oil is going to be a little bit hot. Don't burn yourself. Not much to it. Oh, that oil is dirty. It'll drain a little bit better if you loosen up that filler cap. This particular engine does not have an oil filter, and I know that sounds crazy, and yours might have an oil filter, but some John Deeres simply did not have them. I don't know why, but if you don't have an oil filter, I highly recommend changing your oil twice as much as what's called for. This is going to take about 15-20 minutes even, so you could start another job while you're draining that oil. Check the level once you put like a half a quart in, and just keep on putting a little bit more and a little bit more in until you get the proper reading. And I would definitely not go more than 1 quart before driving it around a little bit and letting the oil settle and checking it again. And that'll give you the most accurate reading. The last thing in the world you want to do is overfill this, because you're going to start busting seals, and now you're going to start getting into expensive repair bills. Here's another quick, easy job that can save you a lot of money down the road if you take care of it now. That's the air filter. Just pull up on that little latch right there. Pull the bottom latch down, and there's your air filter. Pull it out. And you can see it's pretty cruddy. It's time for a new one. Now there's this little paper element in there, this screened element. Is it necessary? Is it not necessary? It's debatable. The air filter I bought did not come with a new one, and the old one was so screwed up that I didn't want a chance putting it back in. There's a little plastic piece behind the filter, acts as a little vent. These things get really, really cruddy, so it's a good idea to take it to the sink and clean her up, buttercup. You can go ahead and dry off that plastic vent, snap it back into place, and put the new filter in the same way you took the old one out. Make sure it's nice and seated in there and the door closes nicely. The fuel filter should be located on the back end of the left-hand side of the tractor. There's two clips, one on each end. Just compress those clips and pull them down a couple. Pull that one down a couple inches and pull the one on the top up a couple inches. Now, the gas that's remaining in the filter is going to leak out. So put those disgusting cigarettes out. Yuck. There's an arrow, there should be an arrow on your filter showing the direction of the gas going into the carburetor. That arrow should go upward, like that. So don't forget when you're putting the new one in, this is very important, put the arrow up toward the carburetor. There it is on the new one. Let's stick it in there, y'all. In this case, I'm replacing the battery because if you leave it sit for 3 or 4 days, it will not start. You have to jump it off, which is becoming a pain in the butt. And they're only between $50 and $55 at your nearest auto parts store or home improvement store or tractor store. In the very least, you should take the battery out and clean up the post. Have the battery checked and check the cables and all the connections. Make sure everything's grounded right and make sure it's getting enough power.